Good evening and welcome to tonight's Roundtable. I'm Michael Witch. Tonight we're going to be talking about therapy, talk therapy. The idea that talking about things that are bothering us can help us clarify them and put them in perspective. And I'm very happy to welcome to our studio three guests. First, sitting next to me is Dr. Gladys Perez de Vito. She is a psychologist and a licensed mental health counselor. And also you are on the board of the Community Resource Center. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. And next to Dr. Perez de Vito is Sean Paul Wade. Sean Paul, you're a certified anger management specialist.
Correct. Thank you for having me.
And you work in Westchester County.
Yes, sir.
And welcome to the local live in LMC TV.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'd like to welcome back to our studio someone who's been here before, Sandy Solar. And Sandy, you're a clinician with the Family Services of Westchester.
Yes, I am, and thank you for having me back.
Well, you're welcome. So we've got about 20 minutes or so to talk about talk therapy. And I'd like to remind our viewers that you can also join in the conversation. You can call us, you can send an email, or you can send a tweet, and the information about how to contact us will appear on your screen during this conversation. So feel free to join in and ask a question, relate a story, make a comment, whatever you wish. Let me ask each of you, from your experience, from your practice, who is looking for help and what kind of issues are they dealing with?
I think there are people looking for help when they are in emotional pain, any kind of crisis, any kind of family problem, people in addiction, they have addictions, and people this also refer for court or for their primary doctors. That's the people they come in for help. I don't have in my 25 years experience people that come, just to improve their life. We are not at that level yet. People when come for therapy is because they really are in emotional pain, they're concerned, they're suffering, and they be referred maybe for other institutions to receive therapy.
As a native Spanish speaker, are you primarily working with the Hispanic population?
Yes, I work with the American population as well, English speaking, but I say maybe 80-20. 20% of my clients are American and 80 Latino.
Sean Paul,
Yes.
In your experience, who comes for help and what are their issues?
Like Gladys said, most of it is crisis related. In anger management, obviously, it generally is court mandated that you have to go and seek services. So therefore, it's either coming from the court system, the probate system. Sometimes when it comes to youth, it's coming from schools, and they've gotten into some issues and they're trying to work through those problems. And there's a lot of anger and hostility built up in a lot of people, and sometimes it comes out and manifests in the wrong way. So it's just trying to work with them so that way they can develop coping mechanisms to deal with the triggers that they have and things of that nature. So that's what we do.
Thank you. And Sandy, the same question from Family Services of Westchester. Who do you see and what kind of issues do they present?
Well, what my experience has been is mostly teenagers. They're being referred by their counselors or their teachers. Also, we have parents that have been mandated by court because their children have been taken away to come in and have a certain number of therapy sessions, which becomes something that we highly recommend for the whole family, actually. And we also have a lot of retired people coming in these days.
Retired people?
Retired. Yeah.
What are those issues?
Some of their issues.
And I should probably know some of them because I myself am retired. And just the transition from working full time.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That's it?
That's
what,
it.
What do you do with your time?
What do you do? And
Purpose.
How are you purposeful?
Depression.
right, so they're feeling
Depression.
depressed, they're feeling anxiety, kind of low self-esteem, worthless. What do I do now? So yeah.
Interesting. One of the things that is something that we all talk about is kind of a stigma that has been attached to talk therapy. I was reading an article where one of the therapists said some of the issues or some of the things she hears about is that talk therapy is hocus-pocus, or it's mental brainwashing or head shrinking. And we know psychologists are sometimes called shrinks, and I
Right.
guess that's where it comes from. But and earlier in conversation, Jean Paul, you told me that it's they're not myths. Some of these things, they're reality.
Absolutely.
What have you found?
Well, in the African American community, you have to look at it historically. So you have to take things back to how we entered the country, the process that we went through slavery, through the Jim Crow era, through the Civil Rights Movement, even to today. And the stigmas that people generally talk about, they're reality for us. The fact that we don't have the education, we don't have the resources, we have a condition where we're told from when we're children not to go outside of the home with any of our family information, to keep it separate. We have an institutional mistrust for all things related to the government, medical field, and it's based on the historical experiences that we've been through. So these things aren't myths, they're reality, and they need to be addressed, both in our own community so that way we can understand how to get over them and work with them, as well as the institutions themselves learning how to understand and work with us. So it has to happen on both sides of the table. But most of these things that they talk about in terms of myths as it relates to the African American community are not myths.
Yeah. Gladys?
Yeah, I think, I agree with Sean. I think that they're not myths, they're reality. But I also think the stigma is getting less and less by year. So I remember when just graduated as a psychologist, it was a privilege to go to the therapy. So really the need to go to the therapist was so clear. Now a lot of people go for therapy, and even we have insurance to go for therapy. We have insurance to go if you have any kind of allergy or if you feel anxious. The same insurance pays that. So now the physical pain and the emotional pain are at the same level. And I think this is part of how the stigma is being eliminated. It's just not like you don't hide it, even the insurance cover for your depression or for any kind of emotional situation that you have. And I think this is one of the ways that we being showing that stigma is disappearing. It's on the same level.
Sandy, have you encountered people who've had not so kind things to say about talk therapy?
Absolutely. Some of the clients, when they first came in, felt that they didn't need the therapy. There was nothing wrong with them. They weren't crazy. They, they didn't want to be there because it meant that they were weak. Something was wrong with them. And their biggest fear was, well, what happens if people start to shy away from me? I come here, I have therapy, that means something's wrong. And, but again, it's all about creating a therapeutic alliance with them, explaining what the benefits of therapy and how actually, knowledge is power. When you're coming to therapy, it's not just talking, it's also educating yourself about what the issues are, a lot of times where they came from, and it's all about finding solutions.
Well, we're going to take a little break now, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about how to find a right therapist. So if you folks would take a look at some of the people that help make LMC TV and the local live possible, we'll be right back. Welcome back to our roundtable. Tonight we're talking about talk therapy, and I've got my three guests here. And now I'd like to ask you, how do you find the right therapist? But before we do, we've got a question that came in, and a viewer wants to know, this is interesting, if talking is the basis for therapy, and at least stereotypically, therapists listen and say, quote, "What do you think?" then why isn't talking to a friend or any old stranger sufficient? Gladys?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Therapy works just for the relationship that you establish with your therapist. It's a safety place when you are not judged by anything, not criticized, just taken the way that you are. And family and friends, they tend to criticize us, to pointing to say what is right, and they don't understand that moment that you are, and that's what we do. And it's not just talk. In therapy, we use different techniques that helps, but the major thing that helps in therapy is the relationship with your therapist. If you feel the trust, that definitely works.
Sandy, before our break, you were talking about establishing a relationship. Is that like feeling comfortable with a person? I mean, is that the way you know that you're with the right person?
Well, the therapeutic alliance it can be formed anywhere between the first to third session. Usually, if you haven't formed it by the third session, it might not work. So what that means is that you're able to understand that the therapist is there to help you, and you're allowing yourself to let the therapist help you. You're allowing yourself to become open and not so much guided, but to explore things together. And when someone is open that way, then they're willing to take feedback. They're able to see things from a different perspective, and it helps them to realize, okay, these are the areas that I need work on. This is where I'm really strong, and this is not so bad.
But Sean Paul, the people that see you, though, are mandated to be there.
Right. I think that even in both of what the ladies are talking about, part of it in that relationship, so again, the experience that African Americans have is that while they make up about 13% of the country's population, when you look at those that are in mental health practitioners, you have less than 2% that are psychologists and psychiatrists. You have about 6.4% that are in social work. You know, the numbers are very low for them to being able to find someone where they might feel comfortable having that relationship with. It's important because, like they both have said, you can develop that relationship with anyone, but it takes those first initial sessions to be able to get that relationship. For African Americans, not being able to go and find a familiar face sets up other barriers, you know, because they wonder about if they're going to be understood, if they're going to be accepted, if they're going to continue to be judged, you know, for some of our behaviors and mannerisms and these little things that dwell within us as we think about how we appear and how people relate to us. These are the things that we are talking about, and yeah, it's a challenge, but it can be overcome.
And I just
Sandra?
want to say that when the therapist is able to establish a relationship, the client is no longer thinking about those barriers.
Absolutely.
And that's when the therapeutic alliance has been formed.
Absolutely. And then that's the challenge that we have as a therapist. I have treated a lot of African American people. Some of them, they were wonderful, others quit because maybe they don't feel connected, maybe they feel I don't understand their culture, but I had a very successful cases, and that's like our challenge to help them, no matter what the culture, helping to connect. But the culture is an important.
Absolutely.
an
You have to be able to
important
build that
factor
rapport.
connect. Yeah.
You know, no matter
That's
who or
our
who you
challenge.
are or where
Yeah.
you come from, you know, even within, you know, same ethnicities, it doesn't matter. You still have to build that rapport
That's
at the end
key.
of the day. Yes.
So, other than people who show up at your door because they're assigned to by a judge, how do you begin to find a therapist? Does someone refer you or recommend, or you do a Google search for people in your area?
All of those answers.
All the above.
All the above.
All the above.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All the above.
Yep.
Yes.
And is there a primary referral? Maybe your primary physician.
Yes, your primary
might be a way to
physician
start.
normally gives the referral. Unless you've come from a crisis unit, then it's coming straight from the hospital.
Okay.
And some refer,
Sure.
some refer for friends as well. Like I had a lot of clients that being referred for their own members of the family, your friends. And part of your question was how to know if how to find the right therapist. I think there is not a formula for that. It has to be something that only you as a patient identify, like Sandy say, maybe 2-3 sessions to identify if it is the real match. Because I know a wonderful therapist, and I refer them, they call me, I'm not going to him or her no more. So it's not the therapist, it's something there, and other is the person is not ready for therapy at the moment. So it's a lot of things that we need to analyze before to decide. But I invite the people that are interested to go and try it. If you don't find good with this clinician, find another one.
Right.
And find somebody that don't be pushy. That's part of the therapist, because you go, but maybe the person is not at the moment of change, and they feel like a threatened sometimes by the therapist.
So the key then is that if you're going into therapy, you need to want to go into therapy. You need to want to change. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
it's
Or even if you don't want to, you have to accept the process.
Okay.
You know, because we don't always do what we want to do. Sometimes we have to do it, but you have to embrace the process.
I think it's also, wanting to change or just wanting to have a different perspective.
Yes.
Most people don't come in saying, I'm going to change, because most of the time they're saying someone else is the problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's about, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I need to kind of look at things a different way. Maybe I need to get someone else's opinion. But let me not say opinion, because we don't really give our opinion, right?
Perspective.
We give our perspective. Well, we teach people, well, what about this perspective? Did you think about this? Could it possibly be? Because after all, we all have our own answers, so we're there to facilitate.
Right.
So before we go, I want to spend a few minutes talking about how we pay for this, whether insurance or however we do it. But before we do that, I want to take another break and have a message here from Lindsley Barrios, one of our newest volunteers. Welcome back to the Roundtable. We're talking about talk therapy, and our last topic is how do we afford it? There are some free services.
Yes.
During the break, Sean Paul, you were mentioning the word free.
Yes.
Where are they?
They're community resources for the most part. So
Okay.
you have to find those organizations that are community based that are offering, classes, services, sometimes even counseling. But you have to find them, and that's part of the issue is that we don't know where to begin to look for these things, and that's across everybody. That's for everybody.
Yeah. Sandy?
Well, definitely insurance is helpful, but at Family Services of Westchester, we do have a sliding scale for
Okay.
someone who can't afford to pay the full session or doesn't have insurance. So that's one of the things that helped us stand out.
Yeah, Large Marone Counseling also has a sliding fee, and the Community Resource Center, they refer to me, and I manage a sliding fee in this area. So people can afford. Some of them, they have insurance, and also the community centers, they help. And we can go even like $20.
Yeah.
And I think at this moment, everybody can afford therapy if they look for it. We have the resources.
Is insurance getting better in terms of covering talk therapy?
I believe it is.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the insurance is getting better, yeah.
Sean Paul, you had a grimace there.
Yeah. No,
Not your experience?
I think that it's not that that's not my experience. I think that there are just some challenges because when it comes to insurance, you're fitting a fluid process into a box, and I think that sometimes it's regimented by the number of treatments or the plan that you can actually implement, when you're dealing with certain situations, and that client may not fit that plan, and then where do you go from there?
I think we could probably do an entire roundtable on insurance issues and how to deal with them.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
we've been given the wrap-up sign. So the time has sped by, but I want to thank Sandy and Gladys and Sean Paul. It was our pleasure having you tonight for our roundtable. And you folks stay right there, because when we return, Rebecca Berman talks to local filmmaker Mark J. Parker about his new short film, Sticks.